What happened when you recorded your ex without them knowing? The notification lit up my phone at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 months after Marcus had effectively turned half our friend group against me. His name on my screen made my stomach drop the same way it had every time someone mentioned him since our breakup. Hey Jess. I know this is random, but I've been thinking about us a lot lately. Can we talk? I miss you. I stared at the message for a full 10 minutes, my hands actually shaking. This was the same man who had ghosted me after 3 years together, only for me to find out through Sarah that he'd been telling everyone I was a manipulative psycho who cheated on him with my coworker Derek. The same man whose stories had cost me invitations to birthday parties, game nights, and even my spot in our monthly book club that I'd helped start. My finger hovered over the delete button, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way Connor had looked right through me at Target last week, or how Emma had literally crossed the street to avoid talking to me. These people had been my friends for years, and Marcus had poisoned every single relationship with his lies. We can talk, I typed back, my heart hammering. But not at my place. Coffee? Actually, could we do somewhere more private? I want to be completely honest with you about everything. My apartment tomorrow at 7? The irony wasn't lost on me, Marcus wanting to be completely honest after months of character assassination. But this felt like an opportunity one couldn't pass up. If he was reaching out, maybe guilt was finally eating at him. Maybe he'd slip up and reveal something I could use. That's when I remembered the voice recording app I downloaded months ago for work interviews. My hands moved before my rational brain could stop them, downloading it again and testing the audio quality. Crystal clear. Okay, I replied. 7 works. I barely slept that night, running through every possible scenario. What if he actually wanted to apologize? What if this was some elaborate setup to hurt me even more? By 6 a.m., I was already dressed and rehearsing how to naturally position my phone to get the clearest audio. The drive to his apartment felt like heading to my own execution. Marcus lived in the same complex he'd shared with his roommate Jake during our relationship, though Jake had moved out after graduation. I'd spent countless evenings there, cooking dinner, watching Netflix, believing I was building something real with someone I trusted completely. I sat in my car for 5 minutes before going up, checking the recording app one more time. The red button seemed to pulse with possibility, or danger. I wasn't even sure what I was hoping to accomplish. Part of me still loved the Marcus I thought I'd known, the one who brought me coffee every morning and remembered my mom's birthday. But that person felt like a fiction now, a character he'd played while systematically planning to destroy my reputation. My finger pressed record as I climbed the stairs to apartment 2B. Whatever happened in the next hour would either give me the closure I desperately needed or confirm that the man I'd planned a future with was truly the monster he'd revealed himself to be. Marcus opened the door before I could knock, like he'd been watching for me. He looked exactly the same perfectly styled brown hair, same disarming smile that had made me fall for him at that party junior year. Jess, he said softly. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I thought, stepping inside with my phone recording every word. The apartment looked different, cleaner, more organized than when Jake lived there. Marcus had hung actual art on the walls instead of the beer posters I remembered, and the coffee table that used to be buried under gaming controllers and empty pizza boxes was spotless. It felt like walking into a stranger's home. You want something to drink? I had that vanilla chai tea you like, he said, already moving toward the kitchen. The casual intimacy of him remembering my drink preference after everything he'd put me through made my chest tighten. I positioned myself on the couch carefully, setting my phone face down on the armrest where the microphone would catch our conversation clearly. Just water is fine, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Marcus returned with 2 glasses, settling onto the opposite end of the couch. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same one I'd given him for his birthday last year, but far enough to maintain the awkward distance between us. You look good, he said, and I caught something in his tone I couldn't quite identify. I heard you got promoted at Anderson Marketing. That stopped me cold. I'd gotten the promotion 6 weeks ago, barely 2 weeks after Marcus had finished torching my social life. The only people who knew were my immediate work colleagues and... How did you hear about that? His smile flickered for just a second. Oh, I think Sarah mentioned it. You know how word gets around. But Sarah hadn't spoken to me since the breakup. She'd been one of the first to ice me out completely after Marcus told everyone I'd been emotionally manipulating him for months and sleeping with Derek behind his back. If Sarah knew about my promotion, it meant Marcus was still actively keeping tabs on my life through our mutual friends. Right, I said slowly. Sarah. Marcus leaned forward, running his hands through his hair in that nervous gesture I knew so well. Jess, I asked you here because I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us, about how things ended. I handled everything really badly. Badly. The word came out flat. 3 months of social exile, of watching my friend group rally around him while treating me like a pariah, and he called it handling things badly. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. The way I ended things was immature. I should have talked to you instead of just disappearing. I waited, letting the silence stretch. My phone continued recording as Marcus fidgeted with his water glass. The thing is, he continued, I realize now that I was scared. Scared of how serious we were getting, scared of commitment. When you started talking about moving in together after graduation, I panicked. But instead of being honest about my fears, I convinced myself that you were the problem. My heart rate spiked. This wasn't matching the story he'd told everyone else at all. According to the Marcus narrative that had spread through our friend group, I was the one who'd been pushing him away while secretly seeing Derek from my office. I was the manipulative one who'd made him feel worthless and insecure. So you're saying your reaction to commitment issues was to tell everyone I cheated on you? Marcus's eyes widened, and for the first time, he looked genuinely surprised. What? Jess, I never said you cheated. Who told you that? The lie came so smoothly, with such apparent sincerity, that for a split second I doubted my own memory. But Emma's words from that horrible conversation outside the campus bookstore came rushing back. I can't believe you did that to him, Jess. Marcus told us everything about you and that guy from work. Come on, Marcus. Don't insult my intelligence. I'm serious, he said, leaning forward with wide, innocent eyes. I would never say something like that about you. You know me better than that. The recording app continued capturing every word of his denial, and I felt the first spark of vindication. He was lying to my face about lies he'd already told, creating new lies to cover the old ones. I was finally going to get my proof. You're telling me you never mentioned Derek to anyone? I pressed, keeping my voice level despite the anger building in my chest. Because Emma was very specific about what you told her. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Emma, look, maybe she misunderstood something I said. You know how she is, she tends to dramatize things. The casual way he threw Emma under the bus made my skin crawl. Emma, who had been one of my closest friends since sophomore year, who'd helped me through my dad's cancer scare and celebrated every small victory in my life. Now he was painting her as some gossip-hungry drama queen to cover his own lies. What exactly did you tell her that she could have misunderstood as me cheating? Marcus rubbed his forehead, putting on a show of trying to remember. I think I mentioned that Derek guy from your work had been texting you a lot toward the end of our relationship. And that it made me uncomfortable. Maybe she jumped to conclusions. My phone felt warm against the couch cushion as it captured every calculated word. Derek had texted me exactly 3 times during my relationship with Marcus, twice about work projects and once to ask if I knew anyone who might want his extra concert ticket. I'd shown Marcus all 3 conversations because he'd been acting weird about me having any male colleagues. Derek texted me 3 times in 2 years, Marcus. About work. Right, but you have to understand how it looked from my perspective. You were staying late at the office more, you seemed distant. He paused, putting on his most vulnerable expression. I was insecure, okay? I thought maybe you were losing interest in me. The rewriting of history was breathtaking. I'd been staying late because Anderson Marketing had been competing for the Hartwell account, the same account that had just earned me my promotion. Marcus knew this because I'd complained to him nightly about the extra hours and stress. He'd even brought me dinner at the office twice during that period. You brought me dinner during those late nights, I said quietly. You knew exactly why I was staying late. Something shifted in his expression. Just for a moment, I saw a flash of the calculation behind his concerned act. I know. Like I said, I wasn't thinking rationally. I was scared of losing you, so I started seeing threats everywhere. Including threats that you then shared with all our friends. I didn't share anything with the intention of hurting you, he said, his voice taking on a slightly sharper edge. I was venting to people I trusted because I was confused and hurt. If some of them got the wrong impression. The wrong impression, I repeated. Connor won't even make eye contact with me, Marcus. Sarah blocked my number. I wasn't invited to Megan's birthday party last month, a party I helped plan 6 months ago. That's not people getting the wrong impression. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his hands. When he looked up, his expression had changed again, softer, more remorseful. Okay, he said finally. You're right. I said things I shouldn't have said. I was hurt and angry, and I let that cloud my judgment. Some of the things I told people, they weren't fair to you. My heart started racing. This was it, he was about to admit to the lies. Every word was being recorded in perfect clarity. What things, specifically? Marcus shifted uncomfortably, running his hand through his hair again. I may have implied that you were being emotionally manipulative. That you were making me feel bad about myself on purpose. And I probably made your friendship with Derek sound more suspicious than it actually was. Probably? He exhaled slowly, like this confession was physically painful. Fine. I told people you were cheating. But Jess, you have to understand, I wasn't thinking clearly. I felt like you were slipping away from me, and I guess I wanted other people to validate that I wasn't crazy for feeling insecure. There it was. The first crack in his carefully constructed narrative, captured forever on my phone. The admission hung in the air between us, and I felt something loosen in my chest for the first time in months. He'd actually said it. Marcus had just confessed to fabricating the cheating story, and every word was saved on my phone. But instead of the relief I'd expected, I felt a surge of cold anger. He was still trying to justify it, still painting himself as the victim of his own insecurities rather than taking real responsibility. So you destroyed my friendships because you were feeling insecure, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. You convinced people I was a cheater and a manipulator because you needed validation. I know how it sounds. Do you? I interrupted. Because I don't think you have any idea what these past 3 months have been like for me. I've eaten lunch alone every day. I had to find a new gym because running into Connor and Mike there was too awkward. Emma literally crossed the street last week to avoid speaking to me. Marcus's face crumpled with what looked like genuine remorse. Jess, I never wanted it to go that far. I don't know what I thought. Maybe that they'd just be supportive for a while and then things would go back to normal. Back to normal? I almost laughed. You told them I was cheating on you. What part of that was supposed to go back to normal? I was going to tell them the truth eventually, he said quickly. Once I figured out how to explain everything without looking like a complete asshole. And when exactly were you planning to do that? Because it's been 3 months, Marcus. 3 months of me being treated like I have the plague by people who used to be my closest friends. He was quiet for a moment, staring at his water glass. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. I was scared that if I admitted I lied, they'd hate me. And I was afraid they might choose you over me. The honesty of that statement was somehow more infuriating than his lies. He'd been willing to let me suffer indefinitely rather than face the consequences of his actions. My phone continued recording as I processed this new level of his selfishness. So you were just going to let me be the villain forever? No, that's why I called you. I want to fix this. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes bright with sudden intensity. I miss you, Jess. I miss us. These 3 months apart have made me realize how much I screwed up, not just with our friends but with our whole relationship. The whiplash from his confession to this attempt at reconciliation made my head spin. You miss me? God, yes. I know I have no right to ask, but I want to try again. We were good together, Jess. Really good. I was just too immature to handle how serious things were getting. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. After systematically destroying my reputation, after months of letting me be ostracized by our entire friend group, he thought he could just apologize and pick up where we left off? Marcus, you told people I was emotionally abusive. You made me sound like some kind of manipulative psychopath. And now you want to get back together? I know I have a lot to make up for, he said earnestly. But I love you. I never stopped loving you, even when I was being an idiot about everything else. If you loved me, how could you do this to me? His face darkened slightly, and for just a moment I saw something else flicker across his features. Because you were pulling away from me, he said, his tone sharper than before. You were spending all that time at work, talking about your career, making plans that didn't seem to include me. I felt like I was losing you anyway. So you decided to destroy me first? I decided to protect myself, he snapped, then immediately looked like he regretted the words. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was hurt. The mask was slipping. This wasn't the remorseful, lovesick ex-boyfriend routine anymore. This was something uglier, something that felt much more like the truth. Protect yourself from what, exactly? Marcus rubbed his face with both hands, and when he looked up, his expression was different again. Harder. From you leaving me behind while you became some hotshot marketing executive. From being the boyfriend who wasn't good enough for your fancy new life. My phone captured every bitter word, including the revelation that his sabotage had been far more calculated than simple insecurity. He'd seen my career ambitions as a threat to his control over me, over our relationship. The promotion he'd congratulated me on earlier suddenly felt like evidence in a case I was still building. So this was all about control, I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. You couldn't handle that I was succeeding at work, so you decided to sabotage my personal life instead. That's not, Marcus started, then stopped himself. He was quiet for almost a full minute, and I could practically see him weighing his options. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed completely. The apologetic, vulnerable tone was gone, replaced by something cold and matter-of-fact. You want to know the truth? Fine. You were becoming insufferable, Jess. Everything was about your job, your goals, your future plans. When was the last time you asked what I wanted? When did you ever consider that maybe I had dreams too? The sudden shift was so jarring that I almost forgot to keep my expression neutral. My phone continued recording as Marcus transformed before my eyes into someone I barely recognized. I asked about your dreams constantly, I said carefully. You're the one who said you were still figuring things out whenever I brought up the future. Because every conversation became about your timeline, he said, his voice rising slightly. Move in together after graduation, but only if we found a place close to your office. Plan a trip to Europe, but it had to be scheduled around your work commitments. Everything revolved around Jessica and her perfect career trajectory. This was a complete rewrite of our relationship history. I'd been the one constantly trying to include him in my future plans, while he'd been the one who seemed allergic to any conversation about commitment or shared goals. I begged you to move in with me, I said. You're the one who kept saying you needed more time to think about it. Because you wanted to control every aspect of it. Marcus stood up abruptly, starting to pace. You had spreadsheets, Jess. Actual spreadsheets about apartment hunting and budget planning. You turned our relationship into a business proposal. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. I'd made one shared Google Doc to keep track of apartments we'd looked at, complete with pros and cons lists because Marcus kept forgetting which places we'd already ruled out and why. You said the organization was helpful, I reminded him. You said you appreciated that I was handling the logistics. What else was I supposed to say? That my girlfriend had turned into some kind of type A control freak who couldn't have a conversation without pulling out her phone to add something to a list? Each word felt like a slap, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was exactly what I'd hoped for, Marcus revealing his true feelings, his real resentments. Every cruel word was being preserved in perfect digital clarity. So you decided to punish me for being organized? I decided to remind you that actions have consequences, he said, whirling around to face me. You were so focused on building your perfect little life that you forgot you were supposed to be building it with someone else. With me. By telling our friends I was cheating on you. Marcus shrugged, the gesture casual and chilling. I told them what they needed to hear to understand what kind of person you really are. Selfish. Manipulative. Someone who uses people to get what she wants and discards them when they're inconvenient. The recording captured every word of his character assassination, including the complete lack of remorse in his voice. This wasn't the broken, regretful ex-boyfriend who texted me at midnight. This was someone who genuinely believed I deserved everything he'd done to me. And Derek? What about Derek? Did you really think I was cheating with him, or was that just the most effective lie you could think of? Marcus's smile was sharp and ugly. Derek was convenient. New guy at your office, texting you about work projects. He made air quotes around the words mockingly. It wasn't hard to make that sound suspicious. Even though you knew it was completely innocent. I knew you were pulling away from me and getting closer to your work friends. Derek, Amanda, that whole crowd of ambitious little sharks you wanted to impress so badly. His voice dripped with disdain. Whether you were actually sleeping with him didn't really matter. The emotional cheating was real enough. The phrase emotional cheating hit me like ice water. Marcus was rewriting reality so completely that I wondered if I'd imagined the last 3 years of our relationship. According to his version, my crime wasn't infidelity, it was having work friends and career ambitions. Emotional cheating, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Because I talked to my colleagues about work. Because you cared more about impressing them than maintaining our relationship, Marcus shot back. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was? Listening to you go on and on about Amanda's brilliant presentation strategies or Derek's insights about the Hartwell account while I was sitting right there, invisible. My phone continued its silent recording as Marcus revealed the depth of his resentment. I remembered those conversations differently. I'd been excited about my work, eager to share my successes and challenges with the person I loved. But in Marcus's mind, my professional enthusiasm had been a personal attack on him. You never told me it bothered you, I said carefully. What was I supposed to say? Hey Jess, could you care less about your career and pay more attention to me instead? His laugh was bitter. You would have turned it into another one of your relationship improvement discussions, complete with action items and follow-up check-ins. The contempt in his voice was breathtaking. Every organizational habit that had helped me succeed at work, every attempt I'd made to communicate openly about our future, he'd apparently seen it all as evidence of my character flaws. So instead you decided to destroy my friendships. I decided to help our friends see who you really were behind all that perfect girlfriend bullshit. Marcus sat back down, but his posture remained aggressive, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Sarah, Connor, Emma, they all thought you were so sweet and considerate. They had no idea how controlling you actually were. Controlling how? The way you managed our entire social calendar. Remember Jake's birthday dinner? You made a reservation without asking anyone what restaurant they preferred, then got upset when people wanted to change it to that sports bar. I stared at him in disbelief. Jake had specifically asked me to handle the dinner reservation because he was swamped with finals. I'd chosen his favorite Italian place, the same restaurant where we'd celebrated his birthday the year before. When half the group decided last minute they wanted wings and beer instead, I'd been disappointed but had called to cancel without complaint. Jake asked me to make that reservation, I said slowly. At Romano's, where we always went for his birthday. See? You don't even recognize it. You just assumed you knew what was best for everyone. Marcus's tone was almost pitying now. It was like being in a relationship with a life coach who never turned off. The recording app captured every word of his revisionist history, each accusation more surreal than the last. Marcus was painting my basic consideration and planning skills as some kind of psychological manipulation. I was trying to be helpful. You were trying to be in control of everything and everyone around you. Including me. His eyes hardened. Especially me. Every suggestion was actually a demand. Every question was actually a criticism. Have you thought about what you want to do after graduation, Marcus? Maybe you should talk to Professor Williams about that internship opportunity, Marcus? Don't you think it would be good to have a 5-year plan, Marcus? His imitation of my voice was cruel and condescending, nothing like how I remembered those conversations. I'd been genuinely curious about his goals, supportive of his interests. But apparently, my encouragement had felt like pressure, my questions like judgment. I wanted to support your ambitions, I said, my voice barely steady. I didn't have any ambitions that met your standards, Marcus replied coldly. I wasn't climbing corporate ladders or networking at professional mixers. I was just trying to figure out my life without having my girlfriend treat me like a project that needed managing. The irony was staggering. While I'd been trying to build a future together, Marcus had been building a case against me, collecting evidence of my supposed crimes to justify what came next. And my phone had captured every damning word. The silence stretched between us as I processed everything Marcus had just revealed. My phone continued recording, capturing not just his words but the complete absence of remorse in his voice. This wasn't the man I thought I'd loved for 3 years. This was someone who had systematically resented every aspect of my personality while pretending to care about me. So this was never about Derek, I said finally. This was about punishing me for having goals. Marcus shrugged again, that same casual gesture that made my skin crawl. Derek was just the easiest way to make people understand what I was dealing with. My girlfriend is an ambitious control freak, doesn't get much sympathy. My girlfriend is cheating on me with her coworker, now that's a story people can rally behind. The calculated nature of his manipulation was breathtaking. He'd weaponized our friends' loyalty and compassion, turning their natural desire to support him into a tool for my destruction. And the emotional abuse allegations? Please. Marcus rolled his eyes. You gaslit me constantly, Jess. Making me feel guilty for not having my shit together as much as you did. Always pushing me to be more ambitious, more organized, more like you. That's not what gaslighting means, I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. There it is, Marcus said with a triumphant smile. The condescending tone. The need to correct and educate everyone around you. Do you hear yourself right now? My hands clenched in my lap as I fought to stay calm. Even now, even while confessing to fabricating stories about me, Marcus was trying to flip the script and make me the villain. The recording app captured every word of his continued manipulation. You told Connor I made you feel worthless, I said, remembering that painful conversation outside the campus library. That I criticized everything you did. Because you did. Marcus's voice hardened again. Maybe not directly, but your little sighs and suggestions and helpful improvements made it pretty fucking clear that nothing I did was good enough for you. I never. You reorganized my closet without asking. You helped me rewrite my resume because mine was fine but could be stronger. You bought me a planner for Christmas because you thought I needed better time management skills. Each example came out like an accusation. You couldn't just let me exist without trying to optimize me. The gift criticism hit particularly hard because I remembered how excited I'd been about that planner. It was expensive, a beautiful leather-bound one from that boutique stationery store Marcus had admired when we'd walked past it downtown. I thought he'd appreciate something that would help him feel more organized and confident about his goals. You said you loved that planner, I whispered. What else was I supposed to say? Thanks for the passive-aggressive reminder that you think I'm a disorganized mess? Marcus laughed bitterly. I threw it away the day after Christmas. The casual cruelty of that admission made my chest tight. While I'd been proud of choosing such a thoughtful gift, Marcus had seen it as an insult worth discarding. Everything I thought was kindness, he'd interpreted as criticism. You know what the really fucked up part is? Marcus continued, his voice taking on a confessional tone that made my stomach drop. Part of me actually did miss you these past few months. The sex was incredible, you were great at handling all the social planning I hated, and having a girlfriend with her shit together did make me look good. My phone captured every word as he reduced our 3-year relationship to a list of conveniences I provided. The casual way he mentioned our intimate life, like it was just another service I performed, made me feel sick. But then I'd remember how exhausting it was, constantly feeling like I was failing some test I didn't even know I was taking. And honestly, watching you get knocked down a few pegs has been pretty satisfying. There it was, the truth I'd been unconsciously dreading. Marcus hadn't just been indifferent to my suffering these past 3 months. He'd been enjoying it. Satisfying, I repeated, making sure the word was clearly recorded. Don't look at me like that. You needed a reality check, Jess. The world doesn't revolve around your plans and timelines and optimization strategies. Sometimes life is messy and unpredictable, and maybe learning to deal with that will actually make you a better person. The recording captured every word of his justification, his genuine belief that destroying my friendships had been some kind of favor to my personal development. Marcus had convinced himself that his cruelty was actually wisdom, his manipulation actually a gift. And I had every damning word saved forever on my phone. The satisfaction in Marcus's voice as he described enjoying my downfall made something cold settle in my stomach, but I forced myself to keep listening. My phone was getting everything, and he was far from done revealing the depths of his manipulation. Actually, he said, leaning back against the couch with an almost relaxed expression, want to know the really beautiful part? I didn't even have to work that hard to convince people. Sarah was already annoyed with you. My heart skipped. What? Oh yeah. She told me at Mike's New Year's party, you remember, the one where you spent 2 hours reorganizing his kitchen because you couldn't cook in chaos. Marcus's smile was sharp. Sarah said watching you rearrange someone else's home without being asked was embarrassing. Her exact words were Jess needs to learn some boundaries. The memory of that night came flooding back. Mike's kitchen had been a disaster, dirty dishes everywhere, no clean counter space, expired food mixed in with fresh groceries. I'd offered to help clean up so we could actually prepare the appetizers we'd promised to bring. Sarah had been laughing and chatting with everyone while I worked, and I thought she appreciated that I was handling the mess. So when you came to her with your lies about me, she was already primed to believe them. I didn't have to lie to Sarah, Marcus said matter-of-factly. I just had to give her permission to say what she was already thinking. You know how Jess can be, I'd say, and Sarah would fill in the blanks herself. Oh my god, yes, she's so controlling. It was like she'd been waiting for someone to acknowledge it. The recording app captured every casual word as Marcus described manipulating Sarah's minor frustrations into full-blown resentment. I thought about all the times Sarah and I had laughed together, shared secrets, supported each other through breakups and family drama. Had she really been harboring irritation this whole time? And Connor was even easier, Marcus continued, clearly enjoying himself now. Remember when you corrected his story about the camping trip at Jake's birthday dinner? About whether it was Lake Hartwell or Lake Keowee? I remembered. Connor had been telling this elaborate story about a disastrous camping trip, but he'd gotten the location wrong. I knew because I'd been on that same trip. I gently corrected him, thinking it was no big deal. Connor bitched about that for weeks, Marcus said. How embarrassing it was to be fact-checked in front of everyone over something that didn't even matter. So when I mentioned how you'd been undermining me in our relationship, he totally got it. Undermining you how? Oh, you know, correcting my stories, finishing my sentences, jumping in to clarify things I'd said. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. Connor started paying attention after that conversation, and suddenly he was seeing examples everywhere. The way you'd speak up when I got details wrong, how you'd add information to stories I was telling. He said it was like watching someone slowly suffocate their boyfriend's personality. Every revelation felt like a physical blow. These tiny moments, corrections I thought were helpful, additions I thought were collaborative, had been reframed as evidence of my controlling nature. Marcus had taken my friend's minor irritations and cultivated them into full-blown grievances. Emma was the only one who defended you at first, he said, almost admiringly. Took me 3 separate conversations to crack her. What did you tell Emma? The truth, actually. That you'd been pulling away from me, spending more time on your career than our relationship, making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Marcus's voice took on a mockingly vulnerable tone. I told her how lonely I felt, how you'd started treating me like a roommate instead of a boyfriend. Emma ate that shit up, you know how she is about romance. Emma, who'd helped me pick out the perfect anniversary gift for Marcus just 2 months before our breakup. Emma, who'd listened to me worry about whether Marcus seemed distant and had assured me that all relationships went through rough patches. But the real genius, Marcus continued, was making it seem like I was trying to protect you even while I was hurt. I don't want people to think badly of Jess, I'd tell them, but I need to talk to someone about what's been happening. Made me look like a loyal boyfriend who was struggling with a painful secret. My phone captured every word of his step-by-step breakdown of how he'd systematically poisoned my friendships while positioning himself as the reluctant victim. The calculation behind it was breathtaking, and now I had proof of exactly how deliberate and cruel his manipulation had been. You destroyed 3 years of friendships because you were jealous of my job, I said quietly. I destroyed the illusion that you were this perfect, considerate person everyone thought you were, Marcus corrected. Really, I did them a favor. Now they know what it's actually like to be close to you. The recording app silently captured his complete lack of remorse as I realized the full scope of what I was dealing with, and what I now had the power to expose. The worst part wasn't even the calculated cruelty of what Marcus had done, it was the pride in his voice as he described it. My phone continued recording as he leaned back, completely relaxed now, like he was sharing a funny story about outsmarting someone in a board game. You want to know the cherry on top, he said, grinning. I didn't just make them dislike you. I made them feel good about it. Like they were finally seeing clearly after being fooled for years. Jesus, Marcus. The words slipped out before I could stop them. What? You're acting like this is some huge betrayal, but honestly, Jess, I probably saved you from years of fake friendships. If Sarah and Connor were that easily turned against you, were they really your friends to begin with? The victim blaming was so audacious I almost laughed. Marcus had systematically manipulated my closest relationships, then had the nerve to suggest he'd done me a favor by exposing how shallow they were. And now you want to get back together, I said, still trying to process the whiplash. Well, yeah. He shrugged like it was obvious. Look, I know I went overboard with the friend thing. But these past 3 months have given us both some perspective. You've learned that your little perfect life isn't as solid as you thought, and I've realized that despite everything, we actually work well together. My stomach turned as I understood what he was really proposing. Marcus wanted to swoop back in as my savior after orchestrating my social destruction. In his twisted logic, isolating me from my support system had been relationship groundwork. Plus, he continued, his voice taking on a more calculating tone, I'm probably the only person who can help you fix things with everyone. I mean, I'm the one they believed in the first place. And there it was, the real reason for tonight's meeting. This wasn't about love or remorse or even reconciliation. This was about power. Marcus had destroyed my friendships to prove he could, and now he was offering to restore them as leverage to get me back under his control. You tell them you lied? I'd tell them we worked things out, he said carefully. That there were misunderstandings on both sides, but we've communicated through our issues. People love a redemption story, Jess. Sarah would probably cry happy tears at the idea of us getting back together. The recording captured every word of his proposed manipulation, including the fact that he still had no intention of actually clearing my name. Even his help would be another lie, painting our reconciliation as mutual forgiveness rather than acknowledging his systematic character assassination. What about Derek? Would you tell them I never actually cheated? Marcus was quiet for a moment, and I could practically see him weighing his options. I think the Derek thing should probably stay between us, he said finally. It would be weird for me to bring up specific details when we're trying to move forward. Better to keep things general, just say we had communication problems that led to misunderstandings. So you'd let them keep thinking I'm capable of cheating? I'd let them focus on our future instead of relitigating the past, he said smoothly. Besides, completely reversing everything I said would make me look pretty bad. And if I look bad, it's harder for me to help rehabilitate your reputation. My phone silently recorded this perfect encapsulation of Marcus's mindset. Even his offer to help me was contingent on protecting his own image and maintaining leverage over me. He wanted credit for fixing problems he'd created while ensuring I remained somewhat damaged in our friends' eyes. The beautiful, terrifying irony was that Marcus thought he was winning. He had no idea that every calculating word, every casual admission of manipulation, every callous description of enjoying my suffering was being preserved in digital clarity. I had everything I needed to destroy him completely. The weight of what I'd just recorded was almost overwhelming. Marcus sat across from me, completely oblivious to the fact that he'd just handed me enough evidence to obliterate every lie he'd told. But as I looked at his smug, self-satisfied expression, a new realization crept in that made my blood run cold. There's something else I should probably mention, Marcus said, his tone shifting to something almost conversational. Since we're being honest about everything. My stomach dropped. After 30 minutes of confessions, what could possibly be left? The thing is, I wasn't exactly faithful during our relationship either. The words hit me like ice water. My phone continued recording as Marcus delivered this bombshell with the same casual tone he'd used to describe destroying my friendships. What do you mean? I mean, I hooked up with other people. Multiple times, actually. He ran his hand through his hair, but there was no shame in the gesture, just mild discomfort at having to explain himself. It started about 8 months before we broke up. 8 months. I did the math quickly, that would put it right around last Valentine's Day, when Marcus had surprised me with dinner at Romano's and told me he loved how stable and secure our relationship was. Who? Does it matter? Marcus shrugged. Random girls from parties, mostly. That blonde from Connor's study group, Madison? We hooked up after Jake's birthday dinner while you were home with the flu. And there was this girl from my economics class, Ashley, or Amanda or something. A few others. Madison. I remembered her, bubbly, sweet, always complimentary about my outfits when we ran into each other on campus. The thought of Marcus sleeping with her while I was sick at home, probably texting him to feel better, made me physically nauseated. 8 months, I repeated, making sure the timeline was clearly recorded. Give or take. Look, it's not like it meant anything. You were so focused on your career stuff, working late constantly, talking about nothing but Anderson marketing and your big promotion goals. I felt invisible in my own relationship. So you cheated on me because I was working hard? I got my needs met elsewhere because my girlfriend had apparently forgotten I existed, Marcus corrected, his voice hardening. Do you know how humiliating it was? Watching you get all excited about some random Tuesday marketing meeting while treating our relationship like an afterthought? The victim blaming was breathtaking. Marcus had systematically cheated on me for the majority of our final year together, then convinced our entire friend group that I was the unfaithful one. The projection was so complete, so calculated, that I wondered if anything about our relationship had been real. Did you use protection? The question slipped out before I could stop it, my mind immediately jumping to health concerns. Marcus looked annoyed by the question. Most of the time. Jesus, Jess, it's not like I was trying to catch something. I was being careful. Most of the time. The casual admission that he'd risked my health along with everything else made my hands shake with rage. Every time we'd been intimate during those 8 months, Marcus had been exposing me to potential STDs without my knowledge or consent. You should probably get tested though, he added, almost as an afterthought. Just to be safe. I got checked a few weeks ago and I'm clean, but you know how it is. The recording captured his complete lack of understanding about why this was horrifying. Marcus was discussing my sexual health like he was recommending a restaurant, casual, slightly inconvenient, but no big deal. A few weeks ago? I managed to ask. Yeah, I've been thinking about calling you for a while now. Figured I should make sure everything was clear before we potentially got back together. His smile was proud, like he'd done something thoughtful. See? I'm already thinking about us as a team again. My phone silently recorded this final, devastating piece of evidence. Marcus hadn't just cheated on me repeatedly, he'd gotten tested specifically because he was planning to manipulate his way back into my life. Even his basic consideration for my health was calculated manipulation. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You cheated on me for 8 months, then told everyone I was the cheater, destroyed all my friendships to punish me for having career goals, and now you want to get back together? When you put it like that, it sounds worse than it was, Marcus said with a slight laugh. But yeah, basically. Look, we both made mistakes, Jess. The important thing is that we learned from them. Both made mistakes. According to Marcus, my crimes of being ambitious and organized were equivalent to his systematic infidelity and character assassination. The recording captured every word of his twisted logic as I realized I was sitting across from someone who genuinely believed his own narrative. I had everything I needed. Every lie, every manipulation, every cruel calculation was now preserved forever. Marcus had just handed me the power to restore my reputation, expose his true character, and ensure that everyone who believed his lies would know exactly who they'd really been supporting. The only question left was what I was going to do with it. The silence stretched between us as I processed everything Marcus had just confessed to. My phone felt warm against the couch cushion, still faithfully recording every damning word. Marcus seemed to mistake my stunned quiet for contemplation of his offer. I know it's a lot to take in, he said, his voice softening into what I recognized as his manipulation mode, the tone he'd used when he wanted something. But think about it, Jess. We could start fresh. Clean slate. Clean slate. The phrase was almost funny considering he'd just admitted to 8 months of cheating and systematic destruction of my social life. I forced myself to stay calm, to keep him talking. What about your guilt? I asked carefully. Doesn't it bother you that Sarah won't even look at me? That Emma crossed the street to avoid me? Marcus shifted uncomfortably, the first real sign of conscience I'd seen all evening. Look, maybe I let things go too far with the friend stuff. But honestly, Emma's always been dramatic, and Sarah's kind of a follower anyway. If they can't think for themselves, that's on them. Even his moment of almost remorse immediately deflected into blaming our friends. My phone captured every word as Marcus revealed that in his mind, everyone was expendable except him. You said you missed me, I pressed. What exactly did you miss? His smile turned predatory. The way you used to look at me like I was the most important thing in your world. Before you got all caught up in your career bullshit and started treating me like a side character in the Jess show. The casual cruelty of reducing my professional ambitions to career bullshit while simultaneously admitting he missed being the center of my attention was staggering. Marcus wanted to be worshipped, not loved. And you think destroying my friendships will make me look at you that way again? I think removing distractions will help you remember what actually matters, he said matter-of-factly. You were happier when your world was smaller, Jess. When it was just us and you didn't have all these other people filling your head with ideas about what you should want. The recording captured his complete admission that isolating me had been intentional, strategic. Marcus genuinely believed that sabotaging my support system would make me more dependent on him, more grateful for his attention. Ideas like what? Like that promotion being more important than our relationship. Like networking events and professional development taking priority over date nights. His voice was getting sharper again. Amanda was the worst influence, always telling you how inspiring your ambition was, encouraging you to lean into your career. Made me sick. Amanda, who'd mentored me through my first year at Anderson Marketing and become one of my closest work friends. According to Marcus, her crime was supporting my professional growth and celebrating my successes. The idea that women encouraging other women was somehow toxic revealed how threatened he'd felt by any relationship that didn't center him. You hated Amanda? I hated what she represented. This whole girl boss feminist bullshit that convinced you that having goals was more important than having a heart. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes bright with conviction. You used to be sweet, Jess. Caring. Focused on us, on building something real together. Amanda and her crowd turned you into some ruthless corporate climber who measured everything by achievement metrics. The recording silently captured his complete rewriting of my personality. In Marcus's version, my natural drive and organization skills were corruptions imposed by outside influences, not fundamental parts of who I was. He'd fallen in love with a version of me that had never actually existed, one where my ambitions were smaller and my world revolved entirely around him. So you decided to eliminate those influences. I decided to give you perspective, he corrected. Show you what really matters. And look, it worked. Here you are, on a Tuesday night, talking to me instead of staying late at some pointless networking mixer. My blood ran cold as I realized Marcus saw tonight as proof that his plan had succeeded. In his twisted logic, my isolated state and willingness to meet with him meant his manipulation was working exactly as intended. The recording app continued capturing every word, building an undeniable case that would destroy him completely. But first, I needed to hear him say one more thing. There's one thing I still don't understand, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral as my phone continued its silent recording. Why reach out now? Why not just leave things as they were? Marcus's expression shifted, and for the first time all evening, he looked almost uncertain. Because things got a little complicated. My stomach dropped. After everything he'd already confessed to, what could possibly be complicated enough to make him nervous? Complicated how? He rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly unable to meet my eyes. Okay, so you remember Madison? The blonde from Connor's study group that I mentioned? The girl he'd slept with while I was homesick with the flu. What about her? She's been persistent lately. Texting me, showing up at places she knows I'll be. Making things awkward with Connor and that whole group. Marcus's voice took on an aggrieved tone, like Madison's behavior was some inexplicable annoyance rather than the natural consequence of his actions. Persistent how? She thinks we're going to be something serious. I may have implied that my relationship with you was more over than it actually was when we hooked up. He glanced at me quickly, then away again. And I might have suggested that once I worked through my trust issues from your cheating, I'd be ready for something real with her. The layers of manipulation were staggering. Marcus had lied to Madison about me being unfaithful to justify sleeping with her, then apparently promised her a relationship once he'd healed from my fictional betrayal. My phone captured every word as I processed this new level of his deception. So you told her I cheated on you too? I had to give her context for why I was emotionally unavailable, Marcus said defensively. She wouldn't have understood otherwise. But now she's getting clingy, and Connor's starting to ask questions about why I'm not giving this amazing girl a real chance after everything you supposedly put me through. And you can't date her because... Marcus looked at me like I was being deliberately obtuse. Because she's boring as hell, Jess. She's got nothing going on, no career ambitions, no interesting thoughts, no drive. She's basically a pretty face who laughs at everything I say and brings me snacks during study sessions. The casual cruelty in his voice made my skin crawl. Madison, who'd apparently been nothing but sweet and supportive, was being dismissed as boring because she didn't challenge him intellectually the way I had. Marcus wanted the devotion he'd found in her, but he missed the mental stimulation I provided. But Connor and Mike keep pushing me to give her a chance, he continued, and I can't keep making excuses without looking like an asshole. Plus, she started hinting to people that we're basically together, which is making things weird with other girls I might want to hook up with. My phone recorded his admission that he was still planning to sleep around even while stringing Madison along and proposing to get back together with me. The scope of his manipulation was breathtaking. He was juggling multiple women while maintaining different lies with each of them. So you need me back to solve your Madison problem. I need us back because we actually make sense together, Marcus corrected. But yeah, having my actual girlfriend return would definitely simplify things. Madison can't exactly argue with true love winning out, right? The recording captured his plan in perfect clarity, used me as a shield against the consequences of his own lies and manipulation. In Marcus's twisted logic, our reconciliation would be the perfect cover story to escape the mess he'd created with Madison while maintaining his reputation with our friend group. What happens when people ask how we worked things out so quickly? I asked. Marcus's smile returned, confident and calculating. That's the beautiful part. I've been setting it up for weeks, telling Connor and Mike how much I miss you, how I've been thinking about reaching out. They'll think I've been pining away this whole time, waiting for the right moment to fight for true love. Even his reconciliation narrative was a carefully constructed lie, designed to make him look romantic rather than manipulative. My phone silently recorded every calculated word as I realized that Marcus had been planning this evening for much longer than his midnight text had suggested. I had everything I needed to destroy him. The question was whether I had the courage to use it. Looking at Marcus across the coffee table, watching him plot out our fake reconciliation with the same casual tone he'd used to describe cheating on me, I felt something crystallize in my chest. The recording app on my phone had been running for 43 minutes now, capturing every damning word. There's just one more thing I need to clear up, Marcus said, checking his phone. About the timeline of when we get back together. My pulse quickened. What about it? Well, I kind of already told Connor that I was planning to reach out to you soon. Like, 2 weeks ago. And I may have mentioned to Sarah last weekend that I was ready to forgive you if you were willing to do the work to rebuild trust. The manipulation was so layered I almost couldn't follow it. You told them you were ready to forgive me? I had to set the stage, Jess. Make it seem like I was being the bigger person, willing to look past your mistakes for the sake of real love. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes bright with pride at his own cleverness. Sarah actually cried when I told her. Said it showed what an incredible man I was, being willing to take you back after everything. My phone captured every word as I realized the full scope of his preparation. This entire evening had been theater. Marcus had already decided we were getting back together and had spent weeks priming our friends to celebrate his magnanimous forgiveness of my fictional crimes. And if I say no? Marcus's expression darkened slightly. Why would you say no? Look at your life right now, Jess. You eat lunch alone every day. You had to find a new gym. Emma literally crosses streets to avoid you. His voice took on a cruelly reasonable tone. I'm offering you a way back to everything you've lost. All you have to do is stop being stubborn about it. The threat beneath his words was crystal clear: accept his terms or remain permanently exiled from our social circle. Marcus was offering to restore what he destroyed, but only if I submitted to his control completely. What about your cheating? I asked. Are you going to tell them about that? God, no. Why would I torpedo our fresh start by bringing up ancient history? Marcus looked genuinely confused by the question. Besides, that was different. I was acting out because of how neglected I felt in our relationship. Once we're back together and you're focused on us again, there won't be any reason for me to look elsewhere. The recording captured his complete lack of accountability, his genuine belief that his infidelity was my fault and would magically resolve itself once I returned to worshipping him properly. In Marcus's mind, the problem wasn't his character, it was my behavior. So let me make sure I understand, I said carefully, ensuring every word would be clear on the recording. You want me to get back together with you, let our friends think you're graciously forgiving me for crimes I didn't commit, never mention that you actually cheated on me for 8 months, and just trust that you won't do it again? When you put it like that, you make it sound calculated, Marcus said with a slight laugh. But yeah, essentially. Look, relationships are about compromise, Jess. I'm willing to overlook your control issues and career obsession. You overlook my moment of weakness when I felt abandoned. We both grow from the experience. My phone silently recorded his final, perfect summary of his twisted worldview, a relationship where my ambition was a character flaw to be overlooked and a systematic betrayal was a momentary lapse to be forgotten. I had 45 minutes of pure gold, and Marcus had no idea what was coming. The silence stretched between us as I processed the magnitude of what Marcus had just laid out. 45 minutes of recorded confessions, and he was still going, apparently convinced he was negotiating from a position of strength. There's one more thing, he said, glancing at his phone again. I should probably mention that I already started telling people we've been texting. My blood turned to ice. What do you mean? Nothing major, Marcus said with a casual wave. Just mentioned to Mike yesterday that you'd reached out, that we were talking about meeting up to discuss things. And I may have told Sarah this morning that I was optimistic about tonight. The recording captured every word as I realized he'd been building a narrative where I was the one pursuing reconciliation. If I walked away now, Marcus could easily spin it as me getting cold feet about apologizing, confirming every lie he'd told about my character. So people are expecting us to get back together. They're expecting me to give you another chance, Marcus corrected. Which, honestly, says a lot about what good friends you have. Even after everything you did, they want to see you redeemed. The manipulation was so complete I felt dizzy. Marcus had positioned himself as a magnanimous victim while priming everyone to celebrate my redemption, a redemption that required admitting to crimes I'd never committed while accepting a relationship with someone who'd betrayed me in every possible way. Connor actually said something interesting yesterday, Marcus continued, settling back into the couch like he was sharing gossip. He said he'd been thinking about that time you corrected his camping story, and maybe he'd overreacted. That maybe you were just trying to be helpful, not controlling. My heart jumped. Connor said that? Don't get too excited. He still thinks you cheated and that the emotional manipulation was fucked up. But he's willing to believe people can change if they really want to. Marcus's smile was sharp. Especially if someone they respect vouches for their progress. The carrot and stick approach was masterful, a hint that redemption might be possible, but only through Marcus's benevolence. My phone continued recording as he dangled the possibility of restored friendships like treats for a performing animal. Sarah's the one you really need to worry about, he said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. She's still pretty hurt about the whole thing. Keeps saying she feels stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. What signs? You know, the way you managed everyone's social calendar, how you always had opinions about what we should do or where we should go. Sarah said she ignored red flags because she wanted to believe the best about you. Marcus shook his head sadly. She's going to need to see some serious changes before she trusts you again. The recording captured his casual destruction of Sarah's perception of me, turning 3 years of close friendship into a list of warning signs she'd supposedly missed. Every thoughtful gesture, every time I'd helped coordinate plans or offered suggestions, had been reframed as evidence of my manipulative nature. What kind of changes? Less controlling behavior, obviously. More consideration for other people's feelings. Maybe some acknowledgement that your way isn't always the best way. Marcus counted off on his fingers like he was listing homework assignments. And definitely more focus on relationships over career advancement. My phone silently documented his demands for my personality reconstruction, essentially asking me to become a completely different person to earn back friendships I'd never actually lost through my own actions. I'm willing to help you work on those things, Marcus added generously. That's what partners do, right? Help each other grow. The recording app captured every word of his offer to manage my personal development, apparently unaware that he'd just handed me 48 minutes of evidence that would destroy him completely. I looked at Marcus's expectant face and realized this was my moment. The decision that would determine whether I spent the rest of my life accepting his version of reality or finally fought back with the truth. I reached for my phone, and Marcus's eyes lit up, probably thinking I was about to agree to his twisted proposal. Instead, I stopped the recording app and watched his face as I played back the last few minutes on speaker. His own voice filled the room. I decided to help our friends see who you really were behind all that perfect girlfriend bullshit. Derek was convenient. Whether you were actually sleeping with him didn't really matter. Marcus went white. What the fuck, Jess? Were you recording this whole time? 48 minutes, I said, standing up and holding my phone protectively. Every lie, every manipulation, every admission of cheating. All of it. He lunged for the phone, but I'd already stepped back toward the door. You can't, that's illegal. You can't record someone without consent. Actually, in South Carolina, I only need one-party consent for audio recordings, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I looked it up before I came here. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions, shock, rage, fear, then something like grudging respect. You planned this. You taught me well. Turns out I can be pretty calculating when someone systematically destroys my life. I backed toward the door, keeping the phone out of his reach. The really beautiful part? I didn't even have to work that hard. You confessed to everything all on your own. Nobody will believe you, he said desperately. You could have edited it, faked the whole thing. With what equipment? In what universe do I have audio editing skills? I laughed, feeling giddy with power for the first time in months. Besides, it's your voice, Marcus. Your words. Your casual admission that you made up the cheating story because Derek was convenient. Marcus sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. What do you want? I want you to text Connor, Sarah, Emma, and everyone else you lied to. Tonight. Tell them the truth, that you made up the stories about me to cover for your own cheating. I pulled up my contacts, finger hovering over Sarah's number. Or I send them the recording. Jess, please. 8 months, Marcus. You cheated on me for 8 months, then convinced everyone I was the unfaithful one. You enjoyed watching me suffer. My voice broke slightly on the last words. Did you really think I'd just take you back after all that? He looked up at me with desperate eyes. I can make this right. We can figure this out together. The only thing you're going to figure out is how to explain this to Madison when she finds out you were trying to get back together with your ex while stringing her along. I held up my phone. That's all in here too. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. How long do I have? 24 hours to tell them yourself. After that, they get the recording along with a detailed timeline of your lies. I reached for the door handle. Oh, and Marcus? If you try to get ahead of this by telling them some bullshit story about me trapping you or manipulating you into saying things you didn't mean, I'll release everything to social media. Your name, their names, all of it. I left him sitting there in the apartment where I'd once believed I was building a future with someone I loved. My hand shook as I got to my car, but for the first time in 3 months, it wasn't from fear or anxiety. It was from the overwhelming relief of finally fighting back.